crappy server demands a better tip. A couple months back, my boyfriend and I went out for drinks one night at this cool little speakeasy in Montreal. It's actually quite an interesting place. You come in through a nondescript entrance and the place has a really nice vibe going on once you get inside. Note, this is one of those bars where the server comes to your table and serves the drinks, rather than one where you order at the bar and take the drinks back yourself. We were seated at our table by the server. We ordered a couple cocktails, and then a couple more, and then a couple more after that. Each time we had to order, my boyfriend or I would have to go fetch the server, so he would take our order, or go up to the bar, order, and then bring the drinks back ourselves. Then, when it came time for the bill, I went up again, so he would come to our table. He came and thought we were going to order again despite me clearly asking for the bill when I went up. So, he went back to get the card machine, and it was another 10 minutes before he was back. At this point, I was quite ticked off at the not so great service, and was debating whether or not I should tip him. The screen had an option for 10%, 15%, 20% or other. I decided to just leave 10% as I wanted to avoid an argument with the server. Montreal service employees are pretty damn notorious when it comes to the expectation of tips. Now, he prints out the receipt and takes a look at it and sees our left 10%. He then asks if we had a nice evening, to which my boyfriend responded that we did. We both thought it was just a standard question servers ask, so we didn't bother telling him about the poor service received, especially because it wouldn't really make a difference at this point. The guy then says, "Oh, well, if you had such a nice time, then you should have left at least a 15% tip. Because, in Canada, it's customary to leave minimum 15% when the service is good." I'm guessing the reason he felt the need to outline that's how it is in Canada is because I'm a brown guy. Now comes the petty part. I responded, "Oh, I didn't know. Why don't you cancel this bill and redo it so I can tip you properly?" He said, "Sure thing, just give me a second," because the manager has to approve bill cancellations. Again, we waited a good 10 minutes for him to come back with the new bill. I was happy to wait, though, because once he came back, I put in the PIN and then selected the other option for tip and left him 0%. He printed out the receipt and his look of disbelief was well worth it. We got up and my white Canadian boyfriend said, "Our only tip for you is to give better service and not be so much of an asshole. In Canada, we don't really like idiots." Reddit comments. Just because you had a nice evening doesn't mean the service was good. You should have told the waiter that you had a nice evening, but it would have been better if you had decent service. Have you ever tried telling staff at a restaurant that something is wrong? You're inviting a conversation and possibly a manager's involvement. They may interrogate you further and perhaps offer some kind of compensation, but the whole process is time consuming and awkward. If you come back, you'll be remembered as the guy who had to complain. Not worth my time. If the service, the food, or something else sucked, I won't want to come back anyway. I'd rather tell a white lie and just be done with it. Depends on the restaurant. A good waiter shouldn't argue with you. Either fix it or get a manager. Telling servers that your food, drink, or service is bad is definitely something people need to do more. Otherwise they think everything is all good and never change. The only thing that would have made this better is if you'd gone up to the bar and tipped the bartender directly, assuming the drinks were good. She or he shouldn't get a $0 tip because the service sucks. I hadn't thought of that. / the drinks were good. So next time I go to the place, I'll be sure to sit at the bar and just tip them directly. I'll leave a decent tip in most situations, just because I've worked in food service before, and I know how crappy it can be, but if a server has the chutzpah to ask for a better tip, then screw that. Tips are earned, not begged. Reading all these comments, American servers, I feel so sorry for you. This is so confusing. In the UK we have to be on at least minimum wage, then tips, which are less common, are just split evenly between the staff with nothing being taken out by government or restaurant. I was at a hibachi place once, and the waitress wasn't satisfied with the $3 tip on my $12 of the meal. I left. She grabbed my arm and said, "You tip more. This not enough." I told her it was more than 20%, and there's more tip from the rest of the table, we just didn't leave them in one pile. She held the money at me and kept insisting I pay more. So I took the $3 and left. Seriously? In what world is tipping mandatory? This is exactly why tipping needs to die already. You can provide me great service, and if I'm an asshole, I still don't have to tip. Edit. I should clarify that my question is rhetorical. I'm aware that tipping isn't a thing outside US and Canada. I had a similar experience at a Japanese restaurant in San Francisco. We were just a bunch of high school kids on a college visit trip and didn't know any better, but we tipped 10% for our crappy, might as well have been instant ramen meal, and started walking out the door when the server and the host ran over and blocked the door, arms outstretched like in a fucking cartoon, and demanded more tip. We paid it like chumps and left. I was getting drinks in a similar situation. Dude was a piece of crap server the whole time. I had to ask for the check 3 times and the guy still didn't bring it over. It had been 30 minutes since the first ask. Me and my buddy just walked out at that point. Ask 3 times and wait 30+ minutes? Must mean you didn't want me to pay. Hope it came out of your check, you idiot. Though I now feel a little bad about doing it. At the time it felt like the right thing to do. I remember the time we had a meal at a Mexican restaurant, and when it came to paying, we had tried 3 times and I even went inside to the cash desk, and they still insisted they were going to bring the bill to the table. We told them we had to go, and had already waited a ridiculous amount of time to pay. We were sitting at tables outside and just got up, and went after about 40 minutes of waiting on the bill. Felt bad about it, but they just did not seem to understand that we had to go. Why he couldn't have just rung me out at the desk is beyond me. I had my card in my hand and explained we were about to go. Had a similar experience in Montreal. The waitress was slow, and after asking 2 times never gave me my ketchup for my fries. We ordered drinks from her, but eventually just went straight to the barman instead when we understood she would not bring them. Did not tip at all. The barman looked like a manager maybe, asked us if everything was okay and if we were satisfied with the service. I explained the situation. The guy said sorry and we left. Fries are nothing without ketchup. I'm from the UK, where tipping isn't expected, but the time I went to Canada with a friend was so awkward. My friend doesn't please easily and hates to tip on anything other than exemplary service. Again, normal in the UK. We were splitting our bill, let's say it was $40, and I hand the server $24 at the register. My friend notices the money I have just handed over and gives the server $16. I just sighed and left. The server shouted a sarcastic thank you at me. I had a restaurant call me because we left a tiny tip. The waiter had 3 tables and we were constantly ignored. He lied about bringing the wrong soup, never refilled our drinks, and just not good all around. We tipped the busser who took care of us secretly in case they tried to take his tip. I have a tip story, but I didn't really get any revenge. So I had sprained my ankle falling down a flight of stairs earlier in the day. I didn't know if it was sprained yet because it had just happened. I was sitting on the couch with my foot elevated, compressed, and iced. Clearly I wasn't going anywhere. Anyway, my mom had heard about it and she messaged me that she was ordering me a pizza online so that I wouldn't have to worry about making dinner. She works nights, so she was currently at work, and so even taking the time to place the order was difficult. As a result, she forgot to put in a tip, like I knew you could do when ordering offline. So the guy knocks on my door and I stumble over to it. I take the pizza, thank him, and he stares blankly at me for a second before saying, "You know, it's customary to leave a tip when you get pizza." I tried to say, "Oh, I'm sorry, I wasn't aware you didn't get one. Let me grab some money." However, I didn't even get the first 2 words out before he turned around and shut the door behind him. He was angry, so he shut it hard, right on my newly injured ankle. I yelped in pain, and he kept walking. The only thing I did was call the manager. I can only hope he was reprimanded or something. Comment and subscribe.